Imagine you are sitting there, just staring at your own reflection in a Zoom waiting room.
Oh, yeah, that is the most stressful screen on the internet.
It really is. I mean, you've checked your lighting, your professional appearance is, flawless, and you just tested your microphone, and the text on the screen just reads, "The host will let you in soon."
Right, and your heart is just pounding.
Exactly, because in a few seconds, that screen is going to flash, a face will appear, and you are immediately thrust into this high-stakes conversation. And I think a lot of candidates sit in that waiting room thinking the interview starts the moment the hiring manager asks, "Tell me about yourself."
Which is such a massive trap.
It is. But here is the critical mindset shift you need to make before that screen even connects. Interviews don't begin when you answer the first question.
They absolutely don't. They begin, well, weeks in advance, really, with how you prepare, how deeply you research the company, and crucially, the professional vocabulary you equip yourself with to, actually articulate your value.
Right.
Because by the time that camera turns on, the foundation should already be poured.
Because preparation creates confidence. Confidence creates opportunity. And before we dive into the exact mechanics of how you build that unshakable confidence, I want to quickly invite you, yes, you listening right now, to follow the English Effect podcast.
Definitely do that.
And subscribe to the English Effect on YouTube. Plus, you need to download the free vocabulary companion from the link in the description so you can follow along with us today.
Yeah, you are definitely going to want that companion in front of you because today's deep dive is basically a masterclass on navigating the 5 toughest interview questions.
The ones everyone dreads.
Exactly, but we aren't just giving you standard interview advice. Our mission today is to show you how to use high-level business English to sound natural, strategic, and just totally in control.
I love that.
We're focusing on practical strategies for adult English learners. Basically, how to ensure that your language perfectly mirrors your actual professional competence.
Right. Because having the skills is really only half the battle.
Yeah.
Communicating them is the other half. So let's just jump straight into the first major hurdle.
Let's do it.
The hiring manager leans in and says, "Tell me about a challenge you faced." Now, let's unpack the business strategy here, because here's what the interviewer is thinking. They do not care about the drama of the specific problem.
No, not at all. They don't care about the gossip.
Right. They are testing your initiative. Do you wait for someone else to fix a broken process, or do you take ownership? And furthermore, your answer has to reflect an understanding of the workplace culture.
That is such a good point. Context matters so much.
It does. I mean, if you are interviewing for a traditional Japanese firm, your challenge might involve navigating complex, private consensus building. But if it's like an American tech startup, the challenge might be a heated debate in a fast-paced boardroom.
Which is exactly why the language you choose to describe this challenge is so critical. A fantastic idiom to use right out of the gate is to say, you face issues head on.
Face issues head on. I like that.
Yeah, in business English, this means dealing with a problem directly and proactively. It just signals immediate maturity. But where most candidates fail is in the structure of the story. They just kind of lack a framework.
Yeah, let's play this out, because I have interviewed dozens of people, and I'll tell you what the weak candidate does. They just start rambling.
Oh, the endless rambling.
It is the worst. They say, well, my manager, Jim, was always changing his mind, and the software kept crashing, and nobody knew what was going on, so I basically had to do everyone's job for them.
Which is just a venting session at that point.
It is. It's like a computer processor stuck in an infinite loop. It's consuming all the interviewer's energy and attention, but it's generating absolutely zero output or resolution.
Exactly. The strong candidate avoids that loop by using the STAR method. And for anyone unfamiliar, that stands for situation, task, action, result. It's like this invisible scaffolding for your story.
Right. It keeps you on track.
Right. It really does. So let's look at the vocabulary a strong candidate uses within that structure. Instead of complaining, my coworkers refused to do the training, a professional says, we encountered significant pushback from senior staff regarding the new mandatory training.
Oh, pushback. That is a great word.
Isn't it? Pushback is a brilliant professional noun for resistance. It totally removes the emotional blame.
Okay, but let me challenge that for a second. If I just rigidly follow situation, task, action, result, don't I risk sounding like a robot reading a script?
You do, yeah, if you mechanically announce each step. Like if you say, the situation was, and then the task was, that sounds terrible.
Right, very textbook.
The trick is to weave the vocabulary naturally. For example, moving from the situation to the action, you don't say, I found out what was wrong. You use a strong collocation, which, is just
Okay.
a natural pairing of words that native speakers expect to hear together.
Give us an example of that.
You say, I collaborated with the team to identify the root issue.
Identify the root issue. Yeah, that implies you didn't just, like, put a Band-Aid on a symptom. You diagnosed the actual disease.
Precisely. And then for the result part of the STAR method, you focus on diplomacy. Instead of saying, I fixed it, you say, we were able to come to a resolution.
Notice the pronoun shift there. We.
Yes. Even if you drove the process, using come to a resolution shows you operate well within a team ecosystem.
So I want to ask you, the listener, which response would make you want to hire someone? The emotional venting session about Jim, or the analytical breakdown of a root issue?
It's pretty obvious when you put it like that.
Right, and the rule of thumb here is that you must spend 20% of your time on the conflict and 80% on the resolution.
And in that 80%, you really need to deploy powerful, specific action verbs, words like coordinated, negotiated, facilitated, and implemented.
Why are those specific verbs so important?
Because verbs dictate agency. Facilitated shows you guided a process. Implemented shows you turned an idea into a reality. These words psychologically position you as the driver, not a passenger.
That makes total sense. Okay, so overcoming external challenges is great. We all love a hero story. But what happens when the challenge was caused by you?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, this naturally brings us to the ultimate test of humility and self-awareness. Question 2. Tell me about a mistake or failure.
This question is just a psychological minefield. The anxiety spikes, body language often closes up. I mean, people physically cross their arms or break eye contact with the camera.
They absolutely do. And I think it's because there is this persistent, terrible interview myth that you should offer a fake mistake.
Ugh, yes.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. Honestly, my biggest failure is that I just work too hard, or I'm too much of a perfectionist.
It's agonizing for a hiring manager to listen to. It honestly insults their intelligence.
It really does. Or worse, people claim they've never actually failed. We look at some great research from recruiter Nicole Bellina on this, and she emphasizes that employers are testing your rational process for learning.
Because they know you weren't perfect.
Exactly. They know you're going to make mistakes if they hire you. They want to see the blueprint of how you recover from them. Shifting blame to a coworker to save face lacks integrity, and it's an immediate, unrecoverable red flag.
Have you ever seen someone do that in an interview?
Oh, absolutely. I remember early in my career, I bombed an interview myself because I tried to blame a missed deadline on a vendor. I physically watched the interviewer lean back, cross his arms, and just check out. The interview was over in his mind.
Ouch. So how do we talk about failure without sounding incompetent? This is where nuanced language is your best tool. You need expressions that allow you to take absolute accountability while maintaining your credibility.
What's a good phrase for that?
A fantastic, natural English expression to open with is, in retrospect, I could have done better. In retrospect means looking back on a past event with the clarity of hindsight. It instantly frames the mistake as a past event that has been thoroughly processed.
It softens the blow, doesn't it? It shows thoughtful reflection rather than defensive panic.
It really does. And if you want a great conversational idiom for the actual mistake, you can say you dropped the ball. For example, early in my management career, I dropped the ball on a major client communication.
Drop the ball. That's from sports, right?
Yeah, it's an idiom from sports. It means you made an error, but it feels human, relatable, and honest. But the pivotal moment is pivoting to the recovery. You frame it as a learning experience.
So let me ask you, what actually qualifies as a failure here? Because I want to challenge the listener to think about this. A failure does not have to be a multi-million-dollar catastrophe.
No, definitely not.
It could be something nuanced, like, being caught by surprise on a project because you didn't set up the right reporting metrics with your team.
Exactly. It's not about the scale of the disaster. It's about the mechanics of the recovery. Don't just say, I fixed it and moved on. Use a progression of recovery verbs like, I acknowledged the oversight, I analyzed the process, and I rectified this situation.
Let's look at that word, rectified. Why is that better than fixed?
Because fixed implies repairing a one-time broken object. Rectified is a higher-level verb that means to correct a systemic imbalance or put a process right. It basically tells the interviewer, I didn't just patch the leak, I redesigned the plumbing so it never happens again.
Acknowledged, analyzed, rectified. That is a powerful sequence. So if you can successfully own a past mistake, you prove your maturity. But naturally, if you're discussing your past, the interviewer's next logical question is going to be about why you are leaving it.
Right.
Which brings us to question 3. Why did you leave your previous job?
This is entirely a test of professionalism and motivation. They are trying to figure out your trajectory. Like, are you running away from something toxic or are you running towards something better?
And there is an inviolable rule of business interviewing here. Never, ever speak negatively about past employers, even if your boss was a tyrant, even if the workplace was a toxic nightmare.
I know some people really struggle with this. They feel like they are lying by omission.
Right. I've had candidates argue with me, saying, but my boss actually was emotionally abusive.
Yeah.
Why can't I just tell the truth?
And what do you tell them?
I tell them, because the interviewer doesn't know your boss. They only know you. It's a psychological phenomenon called spontaneous trait transference.
That sounds intense.
It is. When you describe someone else as toxic, difficult, or incompetent, the listener subconsciously associates those exact traits with you. If you use even mildly negative phrases like, we had a personality clash, the hiring manager instantly thinks, well, will they clash with my team next?
It's a massive risk.
It's exactly like transferring a liability. You are handing the interviewer a heavy box of drama, and they do not want to carry it. They want a solution, not a problem.
So how do we use language to navigate this cleanly? Recruiter Kristen Freeman Johnson gives a brilliant piece of advice in our sources. She says, flip the script.
Flip the script. How so?
Instead of talking about what you hated, use language that proves you are running toward growth. A strong collocation here is new challenge. You say, I am ready for the next challenge. Or you frame it as a career transition.
Okay, but let me push back on the reality of corporate life. What if the listener didn't leave voluntarily? What if they were laid off or, frankly, fired?
Honesty is still required, but you must use polite, objective, professional English. You absolutely avoid emotional or informal words like sacked, fired, or let go.
So what should they say instead?
Instead, you say your role was eliminated or the department was reorganized. For instance, you could say, my position was eliminated during a corporate restructuring, which has given me the opportunity to pursue a role that aligns perfectly with my long-term goals.
See, I have a problem with that. If a candidate sits across from me and says, my role was eliminated during a corporate restructuring, my immediate thought is that they are reading from a PR manual. It sounds really robotic and defensive.
That is a very fair critique. If delivered robotically, it does sound like a shield. The key is in the delivery and the immediate pivot. You don't linger on the word eliminated.
You have to move past it quickly.
Exactly. You deliver it as a brief, neutral fact and immediately inject warmth and enthusiasm into the second half of the sentence. You say, which honestly gave me the push I needed to finally transition into a role like this one, where I can focus on data analytics.
Ah, I see.
The natural expression to use here is, I wanted to seek out new growth rather than let myself get too comfortable.
Rather than let myself get too comfortable. I like that a lot. It reframes a termination or a stagnant job into a catalyst for ambition. It just takes the emotion completely out of the past.
And once you cleanly close the door in your past, it naturally forces the interviewer to look at your future. They want to know what you plan to do with this new ambition. Which brings us to the classic question 4. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Ah, the 5-year vision. This is where they are checking your alignment with their business objectives. They're asking themselves, is this person a long-term investment, or are they just parking here for 6 months while they look for something better?
It requires a very delicate linguistic balance between ambition and realism.
It does. You have to avoid 2 major extremes. Extreme number 1 is being overly specific and aggressive.
Oh, like the people who say they want the boss's job.
Yes. If you look the interviewer in the eye and say, in 5 years, I want your job as director of marketing, you might think you sound confident and driven. But to the interviewer, you just sound presumptuous and naive about how organizations actually work.
What's the second extreme?
Extreme number 2 is being entirely vague. Saying things like, oh, I'm not really sure, I just want to see where the industry goes. That makes you sound rudderless. You are asking a company to invest tens of thousands of dollars in you, and you don't even have a compass.
Executives are huge believers in goal setting and metrics. Your language must reflect that you understand professional milestones. You should rely on solid collocations like long-term commitment and career aspiration.
Career aspirations says.
For example, my career aspirations involve developing deep, specialized expertise in this sector.
That sounds incredibly grounded. It focuses on skill acquisition rather than just, a shiny job title.
Exactly. You can also use the phrase take on additional responsibility. Instead of demanding a promotion, you say, in 5 years, I hope to have attained the expertise necessary to take on additional responsibility, perhaps in a leadership capacity.
That's very smooth.
Listen to the mechanics of the verbs there. Attained, developed, surpassed. They are forward-looking, but they are tethered to actual work and achievement.
But let's get real for a second. Have you, the listener, experienced this exact situation where you honestly, genuinely do not know where you will be in 5 years?
It happens all the time.
Right. Maybe you are pivoting industries, or the market is shifting so fast you just can't predict it.
Yeah.
What do you say then without lying?
Well, you certainly don't lie, but you cannot say, I don't know. That just kills the momentum.
Right. So you use a strategic pivot. You tether your unknown future to their company's present. You say something like, I know I want to build a career in digital marketing, and I see this specific role playing a vital part in helping me determine exactly which specialization I want to master long term.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, you validate the importance of the job you are applying for while being totally honest about your discovery phase.
It's a very smart linguistic pivot. It shows high self-awareness.
Okay, so the candidate has eloquently navigated their past, analyzed their present, and charted their future. But an interview is not an interrogation. It's a two-way business meeting. The final, and sometimes most dangerous test, happens when the interviewer hands over the microphone. Question 5. Do you have any questions for us?
I would argue this is where the interview actually begins to matter the most.
I completely agree. And I am going to introduce a required piece of philosophy here. Please write this down. Confidence isn't something you feel. It's something you prepare.
That is so true.
When they hand you the mic, having absolutely zero questions is a fatal error. It shows a complete lack of engagement. It tells the interviewer you haven't done any research on the company, and you haven't visualized what it would actually be like to work there day to day.
It signals that you are just looking for a job, any job, not this job.
Exactly. But asking the wrong questions is just as damaging. If your first question is about salary, or how much vacation time you get, or if you could leave early on Fridays, you look incredibly transactional. You look like a liability before you've even started.
This is where you deploy high-level strategic business English to prove you think like a partner, not just a subordinate. You want to ask questions that utilize executive vocabulary. Words like company culture, stakeholders, metrics, and competitive advantage.
Give me a concrete example of how a candidate puts those specific words into a natural question.
Instead of asking a basic question like, what will I do every day? You elevate it. You ask, what are the key metrics for success in this role during the first 90 days?
Oh, metrics. Very nice.
Using metrics proves you understand that business is driven by measurable results, not just effort. Or you could ask, how does this department collaborate with other internal stakeholders to maintain the company's competitive advantage?
I want to highlight the word stakeholders there.
Yeah.
It is such a powerful piece of vocabulary. It means anyone invested in the outcome of a project, clients, other departments, executive management. When you use it, you prove you see the big picture. You aren't just sitting in a silo.
Precisely. And if you want a conversational, highly engaging expression that really makes a hiring manager stop and think, ask this, what is the norm for your best people here?
Oh, that's bold.
It is. For example, when you look at your top performers, what's the norm for how they handle industry setbacks? It's brilliant because it shows you are already benchmarking yourself against their elite talent.
That question changes the power dynamic in the room. You are interviewing them on their standards. So here's my practical coaching challenge for you, the listener, drawing directly on recruiter Kristen Freeman Johnson's advice. Always bring a physical notebook to your interview.
Not your phone.
Definitely not your phone. A physical professional notebook with 5 or 6 strategic questions written down. Some of your questions will naturally get answered during the flow of the 45-minute conversation, so you need backups. When they ask, do you have questions? Physically open that notebook.
It's a great visual cue.
It is. That simple body language cue, opening a prepared notebook, shows a level of meticulous preparation that instantly separates you from 90% of the applicant pool. Ask about their plans for growth. Prove you are evaluating their long-term success just as stringently as they are evaluating yours.
If we step back and synthesize everything we've explored today, a very clear roadmap emerges. Success in these high-stakes moments comes down to avoiding the rambling loop by using structured frameworks like the STAR method.
Right.
It requires taking humble, absolute ownership of your professional mistakes. And most importantly, It relies on using targeted business English, words like rectified, metrics, and root issue, to ensure your language elevates rather than diminishes your perceived competence.
It transforms you from a passive applicant into a strategic, highly desirable professional. And I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over long after you finish listening to this deep dive.
What's that?
We are living in a world where anyone can use AI to write a flawless resume. You can use ChatGPT to generate the perfect cover letter in 5 seconds. And the hiring managers know this.
They absolutely do.
Therefore, the written word is losing its value as a metric of competence. That means the live interview, your real-time human ability to articulate complex thoughts, deploy precise vocabulary, and navigate nuance is rapidly becoming the only authentic way to prove your value. Your verbal business English isn't just a communication tool anymore. In an AI-generated world, it is your ultimate professional fingerprint.
That is a staggering reality. The vocabulary you command in the room is the one thing technology cannot fake for you.
Exactly. So prepare it, master it. We hope you've gained some incredibly valuable tools today to do just that. Please remember to follow the podcast, subscribe to The English Effect on YouTube, and download your free vocabulary companion from the description below.
And if you have colleagues or friends who are prepping for their own interviews, be a great friend and share this episode with them.
So the next time you find yourself staring at that Zoom waiting room screen, you won't feel fear. You'll just feel ready.